All right. Good evening, everybody. I would like to call the meeting to order. This is the Monday, November 23rd, 2020 General Committee meeting for the Operating and Capital Budget. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. We'll now move on to the adoption of the agenda, and I will look to the Deputy Clerk for an amendment.
The only amendment we have for today so far is a correction to report for item 8.1. Page 6, the last paragraph should reference Appendix 3 instead of Appendix 2.
Okay. Are there any other amendments to today's agenda? I'm just scanning for any hands. Seeing none then. Moving the motion to adopt the agenda, I have Councillor Sorrento. I just need a wave.
So moved, Chair.
Excellent. And a seconder is Councillor Townsend. Wonderful. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest today? All right, seeing none, just a reminder that councillors are required to submit written statements of declarations to the Deputy Clerk. Moving on to the Chair's report, I really have nothing for this evening. We have an opportunity tonight to look at the capital budget. If successful, we can move that forward to budget night on December the 14th and wrap things up. But other than that, we will move on to item number 6, the motion to move reports on consent. And we have a motion that the General Committee approve the consent agenda, save and accept those items brought forward for discussion forthwith. Moving this is Councillor Littleton. All right, I will look to the clerk then to call the roll.
Today's consent agenda is item 7.1, Legal and Clerk Services, General Committee Correspondence. Councillor Littleton?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Porter? Councillor Sorrento?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Mayor Senzik?
What are we voting on? I was in the waiting room. Someone put me in the waiting room and I just sat there. So
The consent agenda, Mr. Mayor.
thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Chair Cisco?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Kristen, that was a yes for me. I couldn't get my mouse to work, so.
Thank you.
Mice are complicated. Moving on to item 8, the discussion reports, and we will start with item 8.1, Office of the CAO and the 2021 Capital Budget Council Priority Requests and ICIP Grant Update. To start this evening, I'll call upon Mike Gallagher, the President of the Heavy Construction Association of the Regional Niagara, and John Armstrong from Armstrong Communications to make a delegation. So I could look to the clerk to allow them to start the presentation. Greetings, gentlemen.
Good evening, everybody. Mr. Mayor, councilors, staff. My name's Mike Gallagher. I'm president of the HCAR Construction Association, which is the Heavy Construction Association for Niagara, representing the civil and heavy construction industry. Basically your sewer, water main contractors, road reconstruction, paving contractors, building or bridge contractors, not your fancy building guys. We're the guys that put it in the ground and get it done. You know, HCARN has a membership that has employs about 6,000 individuals in Niagara. We're continually being aware of infrastructure projects, investment and bettering the features of our generation. I don't know if we can slip the slides, or who's in control of the slides.
Here we go.
Okay, that's slide 1. Now slide 2, if we can flip to that. So we have a long-standing history in the community. We've probably been in association for about 40 years. We give back to the community. Children's Center, Make-A-Wish. We've been a strong supporter of the Niagara College Civil Engineering programs, engineering days. We can just flip to slide 3. What's the issue? Why are we here today? Our issue is that we've seen a huge decline in tenders for the past 3 months, not just the city of St. Catharines, but across all municipalities. You know, we've contacted some of the municipalities and public works, and they've identified that you know, it's an anomaly. You know, engineering works going on and stuff. You know, I've been an estimator for over 22 years and have tracked the industry, and I've never seen a situation like this where in the past 3 months there's been literally no tenders being called. I think the last substantial one from St. Catharines was mid to late August. You know, I've been doing this for a period of time. Never have I not seen at least 3 St. Catharines hot mix programs. This year there was 1. So we have concern in our industry about the infrastructure projects that are coming out, and we've engaged John Armstrong and Armstrong Communications to help facilitate that. So right now what I'll do is hand it over to John, and John will put a little more detailed background on what he's done.
Thanks, Mike. H. Current came to me because they were concerned about how things dried up. Normally in the fall season, there's another tranche of tenders that come out. That just didn't happen. So they were concerned as to whether or not that was related to COVID. They've managed to avoid any layoffs over the course of the year. Needless to say, that has them concerned about obviously 2020, and it has them equally concerned about 2021. Next slide, please. So what we're hoping that council will consider is we're having a bit of a hard time even sort of wrapping our hands around what from the 2020 capital budget actually hasn't been tendered as of yet. We think that there seem to be a number of projects that haven't been tendered, so we're hoping that those can get out the door as quickly as they can, and as well for during your 2021 budget deliberations. We hope that you maintain that kind of current level of spending. We do see that you're looking at some reductions on the work that the H-card members do. It's not as significant a reduction as in some areas, but we're hoping that you will maintain that programming and also make sure that which is budgeted also gets out the door in 2021 as well. And finally, we'd also suggest that there may be an opportunity to use your capital budget, because it is a debentured budget in many cases. Use your capital budget as a way to help to stimulate jobs and economic growth and development. We do know that and understand that council has a 10% limit on its debt ratio, and that staff are suggesting that may go up between 10 and 12% over 2022 and 2025. But we certainly encourage council to consider using its capital infrastructure as an opportunity to help to stimulate growth and stimulate jobs and help with the economic recovery. Next slide, please. And finally, I mean, the additional reasons why, as well as helping with the economic recovery, financing rates are extremely competitive and very low, and as a result of that, there's good opportunity to be doing more infrastructure projects and not deferring them. And as Mike had indicated, that because the work has really been dry, I can tell you that pencils are very, very sharp. I can tell you that it's very competitive out there, and so going out during this period with more on your spends, you'll get a lot more. You'll get a lot more value for your money. And finally, the last slide, thanks. So, and it's not just us talking about this kind of thing. AMO, in its supporting communities driving recovery in the wake of COVID-19, they stated that reducing capital spending may be attractive to managing budget deficits in the short term, but as experience in the 1990s have shown, these reductions come at a cost to long-term economic growth, as well as environmental and social priorities that are more expensive and difficult to make up later. So with that, we'd like to thank you for your time and take any questions that you might have.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a couple of speakers on the list. I'll start with Mayor Sensik.
Thanks, Chair. And thank you for the presentation, Mike and John. And I think your comments are well-founded, considering the budgets, what we're looking at here tonight, but also looking towards 2021. And I guess maybe this is a question for Mike and supported by John. What we've seen, Mike, and this speaks to the ratepayers in our community, is over the past 3 or 4 years, Director Martuccio last year, as part of our budget, gave us a cost escalation of what we're seeing in the construction side of the business of the city. And over the past 4 or 5 years, the cost of construction has tripled the rate of inflation. So, and as councillors, we get concerned by that, because we're trying to keep the costs to the ratepayers at an affordable rate, and yet we're looking at these large civil contracts that are coming in, and every time our staff put a budget out, they come back either well over the asking price. And then when you do a comparison, so it's not just specific to St. Catharines, Mike, but can you speak to why the construction costs are tripling at times, what the projections would be for projects in the, probably not just Niagara, but to speak specifically to Niagara?
My short and quick answer, some of the estimates are wrong. You know, I've tendered projects for 20 years, like I said, and you know, our labor rates increasing probably at a rate of about 3.5% a year. You know, materials and what have you, I would say are about the same. So to say that they're 3 times the cost or whatever, I think that's probably a little bit inaccurate.
So what I'm talking about, Mike, through the chair, is so you've got rate of inflation.
Yeah.
We all know what that is.
Yeah.
And then you do a comparative over the last 5 years, and you see that a lot of the construction projects are coming in much higher than the rate of inflation. So what you're saying is, and I can only speak from St. Catharines and the region of Niagara in terms of where their cost increases are coming from, because it seems like we're doing fewer projects that's costing us more money.
Right.
And we're, you know, as a municipality, we've got to try and figure out sort of what, so I don't know if it's the estimates that are off.
Yeah, possibly the estimates could be off, but I think one of the big in the last 5 years, probably the biggest material that has taken a huge increase is asphalt and asphalt cement. You know, we used to be paying around $500 a ton for liquid asphalt. You know, now we're up around $800 a ton. So that's, okay, you know, on most road reconstruction project, that's a significant item. You know, I can say that granular hasn't gone up in a comparative price like that has. So
right. So I appreciate that, and I'll just leave it with the final point is that it's not just the heavy contract. It's a lot of the civil contract seems to be going up, and Mike, you're right. It's not the labor cost per se. It's the materials that are also going up. So
like steel.
Yeah, steel's another one.
Steel was another one. Even when I know when we were doing the Meridian Center way back then. It seemed like the price of steel never stopped climbing. So, and markets fluctuate. It depends on the sector, right?
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. I think it's very important that we look at this.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Armstrong. Municipalities, of course, are at the bottom of the feeding chain, so to speak. And there was much ballyhoo about federal infrastructure incentive monies being, given to the provinces and then directed down to municipalities. Mike, has your parent organization provincially asked where this money is? Because I don't think we seem to be getting it to the magnitude that we expected. I just wonder if you could talk to the broader, bigger picture here. Because it seems incongruous to me too that we're not doing more projects at this time as well.
Yeah. Our biggest, we've lobbied through our Ontario Sewer and Water and Ontario Roads. They're taking care of that at the federal level, but sometimes, I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly, but the cost of doing business is getting exceedingly, a little bit more expensive with regulations and what have you. So we're trying at a provincial level to get our message across about getting projects out the door that are concise and don't have a lot of red tape or what have you. But there's lots more legislations. Another act that's coming into place is disposal of contaminated materials and how that's going to be affected. There's new legislation coming on that, and that's just going to cause more cost increases when you have to monitor what leaves your site in each dump truck to another site. It's just tracking, and it's something that the governments want to implement and control, which is needed, but it's going to come with a cost. And the poorest thing is the municipalities are going to take the brunt of that, and the contractors.
Right. My point is that there's a lot of talk about big federal monies being distributed down to the provinces and then on to us, and it just doesn't seem to have materialized as you're describing tonight. We're not seeing the money for infrastructure renewal projects that are supposed to be, stimulus, creating jobs and that kind of thing.
Oh, I agree with you. We approached our association, Ontario Sewer and Water, and the ORBA, and we asked them if they wanted our assistance financially and labor-wise to present, and they said that they had it under control and they're going through the federal and provincial agencies, and basically told us to concentrate at the local level, and that's what we've our mandate has been from our association and members. And it's frustrating because we know it all should come from the top down. It's something that it's frustrating for everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Councillor Williams.
Councillor Cisco, you're muted.
Apologies for that. Technical difficulties, as Mr. Miller pointed out earlier. Councillor Kushner and then Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Armstrong. I certainly agree with you taking a long-term viewpoint, and that now we should be increasing our capital expenditure to get the economy going. But we also have to keep an eye on our deficit. And what would be your reaction if we increased our capital expenditure this year to stimulate the local economy and thereafter reduced our expenditures? Would you come back and say we shouldn't do that either?
No, I would say that it would be an excellent idea, even if it's for a one-year period. I think the economy needs that. the local economy needs that influx of jobs and value.
And I think
So-
it makes sense for you. I think it makes sense for you to be doing it for you to be doing it right now, Councillor, because and is a reduction going to make everybody apprehensive again? Probably. But it's I think it's definitely sort of the right time for a lot of the reasons that we talked about.
Okay, it's the right time to stimulate the economy now, but what about next year? Would be the right time to look at our deficit or debt and to reduce it at that time?
You have to look at what's going on in the economy and how how COVID's going and what the rebound what's going on with the rebound with the economy. I think there are a lot of variables to be able to make that decision at this point.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Porter, did you still want to speak?
No, Councillor Williamson asked a question along a similar vein, and I'm satisfied with Mr. Gallagher's response. Thanks.
Okay. All right then. If there are no more questions of the presenters, I'd like to thank Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Armstrong for your presentation this evening and for answering questions of council. Can I have a councillor make a motion to receive the delegation by Mr. Gallagher and Armstrong? Councillor Kushner. All right. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. All right, then. I will now look to Mr. Martuccio, the Director of Engineering, Facilities, and Environmental Services, to present regarding the 2021 Capital Budget Council priority requests and the ICIP grant update. Mr. Martuccio.
Thank you, Councillor Cisco. Good evening, Budget Chair, General Committee members, citizens, and senior staff. At the General Committee meeting on August 21st, staff presented the draft 2021 capital budget and four-year forecast for discussion. During that meeting, Council made a number of requests for items to be added, adjusted, or removed to better address the needs of the city and better reflect the priorities of Council. Staff have reviewed each request and are returning to Council with recommendations for an amended draft 2021 capital budget as presented to you tonight. Staff have reviewed Council's list of priority requests to determine which projects can be feasibly added to the 2021 capital budget and which projects are being recommended for consideration in future budgets. In determining the items for inclusion in the 2021 recommended amendments, staff assessed each project by considering a number of factors such as costs, time to execute, legislative requirements, and infrastructure needs. Staff recognize that COVID-19 has also triggered a review and reprioritization of certain projects to create opportunities for residents to enjoy open spaces the city has to offer and to address social needs in the community. Next slide. Given that staff have pivoted and are proposing the addition of the 6 projects shown on the screen to the 2021 capital budget. Originally, the additional funds to construct the Grantham Rail Trail, also known as the CNR Spurline Trail, and the funds to design the parking lot at Sunset Beach were included as part of the COVID-19 ICIP project. These projects have now been broken out as a standalone item in the budget to ensure progress or implementation in 2021. The Chestnut Street Extension Municipal Class EA assessment has the potential of being carried out in conjunction with the Merritt Street work already included in the budget. This project is also supported by the draft TMP. The purchase and installation of a single unit, all-season, self-cleaning accessible washroom with the location still to be determined. The total cost will vary depending on the final location chosen to accommodate this washroom. It is also anticipated that there will be significant operating costs that should be allocated in future budgets for staffing and materials to maintain the functionality of this automated facility. Funds have been allocated to gate and fence the covered walkway at the Centennial Library to improve the security and mitigate vandalism to the Church Street entrance. A new aquatic strategy will come before Council in Q1 of 2021 for approval, and although the final list of recommendations have not been completed, staff are evaluating a number of possibilities with outdoor aquatics that could include a splash pad. These funds will allow for the design of a new splash pad and seasonal washroom facility in anticipation of the 2022 capital budget having an allocation of $1 million for the construction of the proposed project. Next slide. Staff are recommending the following projects be considered in future capital budgets. The construction of a splash pad and seasonal washroom in accordance with the recommendations included in the forthcoming aquatic strategy. The construction of seasonal public washrooms to support park activities at Centennial Gardens, and the construction of bike lanes on Arthur Street from Lakeshore to Beach Haven Drive. There is an extensive and connected trail system in this part of the city that supports active transportation routes to Sunset Beach and other local destinations. A map identifying this system is included as an appendix in the package before you tonight. Significant funding is required to implement bike lanes on Arthur Street due to the required relocation of utilities, traffic signals, and the reconstruction of the right-of-way along sections of the street to safely accommodate bike lanes. These bike lanes are not currently supported in the draft TMP. As a much more affordable alternative, staff could look at improving wayfinding to better identify the trail system available to residents. Next slide. On November 10th, the province provided notification that the city would be allocated $1,030,936 from the COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream funding. This amount is considerably lower than the potential of $8,133,064 in funding that staff were anticipating based on preliminary information provided by the province. The requirement for 20% matching funds by the city has also been eliminated. Staff have prioritized the original project list and have selected five projects that will provide improvements to the active transportation network. The projects on the screen before you will create new connections, create improvements to trails by making them more resilient to climate change, support community events such as Canada Summer Games or the World Rowing Championships, and support corporate plans such as the upcoming TMP. Next slide. Staff have also identified several projects within the proposed draft 2021 capital budget that have been impacted by the rapidly changing environment caused by COVID-19. As a result, staff have pivoted and reprioritized the following projects. The city's interest to divest itself of properties such as 6-8 Academy and 320 Geneva Street will result in the need to relocate staff to alternative work accommodations. Prior to COVID-19, it was anticipated that the vacant commercial space at the Carlisle Street parking garage would be required to support this need. The city's experience related to the disruption of service as a result of the COVID pandemic and the requirement of having staff work remotely has resulted in the reevaluation of staff's needs as it relates to physical workspace. The draft 2021 capital budget also included $2.625 million for upgrades to Robertson School. Staff feel that $2.2 million of the funding for projects related to accessibility upgrades can be removed and reconsidered in future budgets. By reprioritizing these projects, $2.5 million has been freed up to be allocated towards the recommended amendments presented earlier, which totaled $1,490,000. The impacts of staff's recommendations, including the impact from Niagara District Airport, is a net amount of $1,188,500 being removed from the draft 2021 capital budget. These net funds can be reallocated to fund additional active transportation projects that are not included in the latest ICIP grant proposed project list found in Appendix 2. This would allow staff to further address needs related to active transportation across the city, as well as priority requests from council. Investments in active transportation produce health outcomes for residents of all ages, and it reinforces the city's commitment to environmental stewardship and climate change initiatives. Next slide. The city's capital budget is built around a healthy balance of our strategic plan, which includes economic prosperity, environmental stewardship, social well-being, and cultural renaissance, and our responsibility as it relates to asset management. Economic prosperity is supported through the investment in our infrastructure such as roads, water mains, and sewers. Asset management is not just about infrastructure renewal. It results in the safe and reliable use of infrastructure, critical in supporting efficient modes of transportation throughout our city and the continued growth of businesses in our community. Environmental stewardship and climate change is supported through projects where alternative modes of active transportation are implemented through sidewalks, bike lanes, and trails, or through projects where investment is made towards increasing the city's tree canopy, protecting waterways and shoreline, and through the mitigation of pollution control. Social well-being is supported through projects such as the construction of the Canada Summer Games facilities, new accessible public washroom facilities, improvements to our arenas, and upgrades to our park amenities such as playgrounds and sport courts for everyone to enjoy. Projects such as the upgrades to the museum HVAC, installation of gates at the library, and investment made towards a memorial bench programming and the Performing Arts Center demonstrate continued support of the city's cultural renaissance. St. Catharines is a community like no other. It is diverse and inclusive, a place for anyone and everyone. This is our city, our home. Thank you for your attention tonight.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Martuccio. Before we, actually, I think I'll look for a motion to make the staff recommendation so that we can discuss the report. I have Councillor Littleton with staff recommendation, yes, and then a councillor to second the motion. I thought I saw Councillor Phillips' hand. Councillor Phillips, all right. And so it's now on the floor. Councillor Littleton, do you want to speak to the motion to begin with?
I'll wait.
Okay, so Councillor Littleton is going to wait. Then any questions, comments from council? I have Councillor Garcia followed by, sorry, just spanning Councillor Sorrento and Councillor Miller at this time. So Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Director Martuccio. Obviously, trails and active transportation investments are good, particularly given the pandemic situation or the need for people to get out. But I just wonder about some of the estimates, like the Grantham Trail, for example. Why is that $340,000? It seems like a lot to me.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the additional funds for the Grantham Rail Trail of $340,000 are required to deal with site conditions that were identified through the detailed design of the for the trail system. There's some site concerns that we need to deal with, which requires much more significant funding.
Okay, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, specifically what site conditions are you talking about? Anything that we can discuss, or?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, there's some site contamination that was identified on the site, and we're currently identifying the extent of it in order to be able to deal with it.
Okay, thank you for that. And through you, Mr. Chair, I wanted to ask about the self-cleaning washroom, if we can look at that in a little more detail. That washroom is only like toilet facilities and a sink, is that correct? Or?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, that is correct. Those estimates were based on the limited research that staff were able to do, obviously, in the last few weeks. But it is a self-contained, accessible, single stall washroom with a toilet and a sink.
Okay, and so that self-cleans, but through you, Mr. Chair, by comparison, how much does a self-standing washroom that is not self-cleaning would cost?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, it really depends on the type of facility that we're building. If we're looking at our standard parks, washrooms that accommodate much more people, a a typical washroom facility in our parks is in the range of about $750,000.
Thank you. But through you, Mr. Chair, to compare apples to apples, if we had just one stall, as you said, and a sink, any idea what that would cost if it wasn't self-cleaning?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I don't have the exact costs right now. We didn't take a look at that, but I just a quick estimate. I would assume it would be somewhere in the $250,000 to $300,000 range.
Okay, thank you. And a couple of other questions on the same subject. If we needed to provide public washrooms in the downtown area and other areas, as the faith community has suggested and so on, what about if we had to temporarily provide porta potties, for example? Are they very expensive to rent? Or?
To you, Mr. Budget Chair, I would defer that question to Director Smith, as his staff are currently responsible for deploying those types of facilities.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have secured some porta potties for the winter in the downtown core. They're not overly expensive to rent. The issue with the porta potties, as always, is with any washrooms that are open to the public, is keeping them clean and stocked, which requires, of course, some staff time and that. So the more washrooms we put out, there's more strain on staff resources. And they are, of course, in the winter, we've got to then make sure that we clean and salt around the entrances to the washrooms. So we have to be very careful where we select, but overall, we can provide 4 or 5 porta potties in the downtown core within our current budget and complement.
Thank you, Director, and through you, Mr. Chair. So those are 4 or 5 washrooms that we are currently not providing that would be additional to satisfy the need out there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're already in place. We've already put them out. So we've have some out by Market Square. We have maintained the one in Centennial Park. And we are working with some of the region's social groups to determine the best location for 2 others, which we have allocated for within our budget. We expect those to go out shortly.
So through you, Mr. Chair, but are those 3, the first 3, do we put those out every year, or is it something we're doing this year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is something we've done because of the impact of COVID and COVID on available facilities in the downtown core. So this is something new that we have done this year.
Okay, so what we're saying is, without adding the self-cleaning washroom, we're already adding 5 facilities that were not there. And one last question through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know if it's to which director, but has staff discussed with any of the churches that have advocated for washrooms some kind of a partnership where we could perhaps get their washrooms open to the public, and we will provide cleaning or do other contributions, so that nothing new has to be built in that case, but something is already available and can be secured and cleaned?
Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe I'll jump in on this one. Staff have been in discussions with various churches and social agencies to partner on the provision of washrooms, and this has been happening over several years, actually. The challenge that we find is it's not so much during the day or during operating hours, it's those times when places are closed. And the discussion that we've been having, in particular this year with COVID, most of the buildings and facilities are not available to the public. City Hall, as an example, is by appointment only. So there's a compounded issue happening this year in and around the public spaces. But we also, I'd like to point out too that, you know, the portable washrooms that we do provide, the service contract is, it's subject to the use and abuse that the facilities see as well. We're on our second provider right now because we had some challenging abuses of the portable toilets, and they're not necessarily amenable for winter use either. So trying to find some more permanent facilities to provide the public is a challenge, both at the city level, but also with the partners. And as Director Smith had mentioned, we are working with the region to try to locate these facilities in areas of high need, but at the same time being in accessible locations where you know, there are eyes on the street to be able to help you know, oversee the facilities as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Councillor Garcia. I have Councillor Sorrento, followed by Councillors Miller, Williamson, Townsend, and Kushner. Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you. Recognizing you, Chair Cisco. My question is for Director Martuccio. In the report on page 9, I believe under future consideration, there's a paragraph there that states, the title is Deferral of Wood Street, and I presume it's a cast iron water main. Can you please tell us, Director, if that work is going to be done next year?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair. Yes, that the replacement of the water main on Wood Street and Green Meadow Crescent are still included in the 2021 draft capital budget. The reason why it's entitled Deferral of Wood Street is that was the request that was made at the last budget standing committee. However, we are recommending against the deferral of that work.
Thank you. There is also in the report Pearson Park Vision Trail. And recognizing you, Chair, question to any one of our directors. I don't know if that's Director Christie or Director Martuccio. The Vision Trail, can we just get like a 30-second snippet of what that is? What that would involve, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will need to get a copy of the drawings for you, Councillor, and I would be happy to find it now and send it to you via email if that's all right. I just don't have it in front of me right now.
No, that's fine, and I'll look forward to that. Maybe you can send it to Councillor Townsend if he so wishes, and or the rest of council. Thank you, Director. Recognizing you, Chair Cisco, I have a question about the ICIP funding, and to any one of our financial directors, can you tell me if this was a decision that was made at the provincial level or at the federal level in determining what was the final amount that was given to our city?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to the ICIP grant program, it is actually a joint program. The city does need to complete an application, which is sent to the province, and then the province would make a recommendation to the federal government. So it truly is both a federal and provincial program.
Okay. And did we have to have projects that were ready to go to partner with the province or the feds? That's my understanding. So just looking for clarification.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to the program, we have received the funding allocation of amount of a little over $1 million. The city does need to submit an application by December 21st of 2020, and the project does need to be completed by December 31st of 2021. Therefore, due to those extremely tight timelines, there are a limited number of projects that would be able to be completed within the 2021 construction season.
And recognizing you, Chair, another question to Director Douglas. Did the city have $10 million of infrastructure projects ready to go, shovel ready, or to any one of our directors?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, with regards to the original capital budget, the city did put together a project that was equivalent to $10 million because the limited information that was available when the ICIP program was released, it did indicate that the projects would be up to $10 million. And we also knew the tight time deadline, so that was the reason why the city put together that original project amount. We then received the information that we would receive. It would be an allocation based, but still need to apply for approval to the provincial and federal governments.
And one final question, recognizing you, Chair, to Director Douglas, do we have any outstanding applications or projects that we're going to apply for before the 20th?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point in time, we are waiting to hear on at least one other funding program. There was also the another program that was announced. It's not for capital, but we are always looking and listening for projects that are released, and any opportunity that we have to apply for funding, the city does do that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Sorrento, I'm just going to jump in. Mr. Christie, the Director of Community Recreation Cultural Services, raised his hand, and I'm assuming it has to do specifically to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, Councilor Sorrento, in response to your question, threw me off when you had referred to it as a vision trail, because we didn't name the trail. It was a recommendation as part of the visioning exercise that we carried out for the for 360 Niagara. And so that was a recommendation from the community to better link the park, Lester B. Pearson Park, through the neighborhoods. So the project would entail the creation of accessible paths from the surrounding neighborhoods to the park as an alternate to get to the park instead of driving to the park.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Director. And Chair Cisco, I do have a concern about the standalone washroom. So at the appropriate time, I'll look for your guidance procedurally, and perhaps we can split it up. And I'll just speak to that amendment at that time, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Councillor, I'm actually going to ask staff if your request is for that to be split out, then I'm going to ask staff to put the appropriate wording. Well, yeah, that has to be because you're asking to split the motion. I'm going to look at Ms. Ms. Sullivan. What's the best way technically to do this so that we can keep the meeting moving efficiently?
I think if it is what the councillor is looking to achieve, the councillor would move a motion to have the self-contained washroom removed from the draft budget.
I think he's asking to, he's going to want to vote on it separately from the rest of the capital budget.
That's correct, Chair.
And so if it's simply an amendment, then if the amendment's defeated, it would force him to have to vote on the entire budget. Is that the only procedural way to do this?
If the councillor wants just to be noted as opposed in the minutes, that would be one way to achieve it as well. He could ask to be noted as opposed to that item. It depends what is the goal that he's trying to achieve.
I think my goal, Chair, to recognizing you, Chair Cisco, to the Deputy Clerk, my goal is to split it out and to have council vote on it independently. Okay. That's the goal.
Okay, then that's understood. Then I will ask exactly as Ms. Alfieri, I think, is doing right now, that be removed from the draft, and that will be voted on first. Because I'm looking to Councillor Littleton, that would be unfriendly, so we would vote on that first when we got to the time for votes. Councillor Littleton, am I correct?
As the staff recommendation stands, it would be unfriendly.
Okay. So Councillor.
Chair?
Yes.
Chair, just with your permission, friendly reminder, I think perhaps another councillor might have a similar amendment. So I don't want to duplicate that. So I will leave it to your discretion. And because I think Councillor Miller might have an amendment that's similar to that. So just a little FYI for you, okay? And thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so that will be there. And Councillor Miller is the next speaker. So timing is everything, I suppose.
Point of order. Just need clarification.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
On the amendment, sorry, Councillor Miller, on the amendment, I don't believe you can lift an item and then have a contrarian word of removed be from it. It would just be lift to simply deal with that as the existing motion. So not to put in the word removed. It would be lift that section, we vote on it, and if a councillor does not want that to be in the budget, it's going to be the will of council whether or not that happens.
Okay, so I'm going to look to the clerk and deputy clerk. Can we?
Yep, we can work on that.
Okay, just so that it's procedurally correct, and that before we vote, that clarification is given so all councillors understand exactly how to vote to ensure that they are voting in a way which is consistent with what they want. All right, wonderful. Now, Councillor Miller, you have the floor.
Thanks. I have some questions, but I just want to point out I do have an amendment specifically to the washrooms that staff has right now that I think would, though it's not in alliance or with what Councillor Sorrento I think wants to achieve, it I think it would allow him to vote against it, perhaps. Although I suppose if it's friendly, maybe not. But anyway, so I do have that amendment to the washrooms. I'll speak to that really quickly. It's about ensuring the self-contained washrooms that are recommended in the budget are placed in the Queenston Street / Centennial Gardens area. The reason for that is this is an area of high need. We have the letter on our consent agenda from the Queenston Neighborhood Association that I know everyone read that speaks to that. The downtown situation with washrooms is different and was fairly specific to COVID-19. And probably, I think I can pretty safely, though I don't have a crystal ball, probably won't exist where, again, in the future, because we have public washrooms down there, whereas the situation on Queenston Street and Centennial Gardens is long-standing, is not specific to COVID-19. So what I'm asking is that we keep the budget at the same amount, but that we specify that the self-contained bathroom go to the Queenston Centennial Gardens area. So that's that amendment. And I can speak more to it, but I do want to ask a couple questions if that's okay, Mr. Chair, or how do you want to deal with this?
Well, Councillor Miller, I'm first going to look to Councillor Hamilton to find out if that's a friendly amendment.
Sure.
So this is difficult because I think I would rather see this as a possible discussion on where it needs to go, because I have concerns with the Centennial Gardens portion of this motion.
Okay, so it's an unfriendly amendment, so I'm going to make sure with the deputy clerk that I'm following procedure properly. Should we deal with this amendment now specifically, given that
I think if there's anything else about the washrooms, we may also want to flush that out as well. I did not intend that. But yes, I would suggest that we deal with the amendments that are in front of you first.
Okay, Councillor Sorrento, as you gave me the ability to make a decision here, I'm going to ask that we deal with Councillor Miller's amendment first. Does that make sense? Okay, so Councillor Miller,
fine, Chair, thank you.
You have the floor with respect to your amendment, which we are dealing with specifically at this time, that the self-contained washroom be placed in the Queenston Centennial Garden area, etc., as on the screen. Okay, Councillor Miller, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I guess I'll finish speaking to this. As I said, the issue in Centennial Gardens is not necessarily COVID related. And we're not just talking about people living rough or forced into houselessness in our community, although that is a significant issue. I know it's a significant amount of staff time that is spent cleaning the area from people defecating and urinating outside because there isn't a proper public washroom. I think Director Smith aptly touched on why porta potties are not sufficient. One, I don't think they provide a proper amount of dignity to the people that need to use them. And two, operationally, there's a lot more involved. These units would be self-cleaning. And three, they're frankly not usable in the winter, in my opinion. I don't think that we should expect members of our community to use them in the winter. The self-cleaning washroom, I know the price tag is expensive, but it has a lot of benefits operationally in terms of upkeep is a lot less. Monitoring, we need a lot less. They lock and unlock automatically. I think the community is clearly behind this. In the letter we received, so I think we'd have a lot of support and help in terms of monitoring. We know we have street works out in the area who maybe couldn't check on the unit overnight and things like that. So I'm not saying, I know the $750,000 was recommended for the future. I think that should remain as an option in the future. A more permanent washroom. And the good thing about these units, the self-contained one, is it can be moved at that time, if moved to somewhere like downtown, or moved if we're doing renovations of the Pearson Park washrooms, the Line Dunk School washroom, we can move the portable unit somewhere else in the city. So it's a good asset to have no matter what. And operationally, we know Mayor Sedzik budgeted for outreach staff in parks last year. So we have some extra staff who maybe could help monitor this unit. And frankly, I think we're going to save a lot of staff time that is used dealing with people not having access to a public washroom. And then further than that, with regards to Centennial Gardens, 100%, a lot of concern about, because of this word got used a lot a couple of weeks ago. So I wanted the topography of Centennial Gardens, I think, makes it difficult. It's in a valley. It makes it maybe difficult and dangerous to have a permanent washroom there. But it's also, there's Gale Crescent and there's Oakdale that are there as possible locations right off the road. So I think that helps mitigate that. So the location, I think we have some time to really figure out and work with the community on this. I mean, the specific location, but the need, and I think we need to start with it. The need in the community is dire and urgent, and so we need to budget for it for this year. And the logistics of what the actual GPS coordinates of where this unit will go, we have time to work out. And then the permanent washroom, we have an opportunity to look at that going forward as well. Still, if we budget for this year. And certainly, I think we should be looking to work with the region and providing some extra services in that area as well. So I think, and then I talked to a few councillors this week. I think a long-term strategy about public washrooms and public showers. I know Councillor Porter's touched on that in the past. Downtown and in the Queenston area is necessary, and that can happen at the same time. What I don't want to see is another spring and summer where we're asking members of our community, people playing disc golf, people using the community gardens, people using the Merritt Trail, to have to pee behind a tree and go number two. I don't know what swear words I'm allowed or not to say here. Do in public. I don't think that offers dignity, and I don't think that's a realistic expectation. So I'm asking that we budget for this, we get it done this year, and we look at a long-term plan going forward.
All right, Councillor Miller, thank you. I will say I appreciate your use of the term doo-doo, and I noticed a few smiles around the council table, so that was the right word. I'm going to very quickly to Councillors Williamson, Townsend, Kushner, Porter, and Dodge. I have you on a list. I'm going to ask you to lower your hand so we can deal with the amendment, because most of you were on the list to speak to the motion as a whole. If you would still like to speak to the amendment specifically, then please keep your hand raised and you won't lose the ability. I have my order here of people that want to speak to the main motion. So that's written down. And Councillor Miller, you will still have the opportunity to speak to the rest of the balance of the motion once we're finished with the amendment. So I'm looking at my list here, and if I lower your hand, it's because I'm just I'm working through it. Councillor Kushner, speaking specifically to the amendment.
Yes, to the amendment, I would suggest that staff is responsible for making the recommendation. That may be an ideal spot, but I would like a staff opinion on it before we vote. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to guess Mr. Martuccio would be the best staff person to speak to this.
Yes, through you, Mr. Budget Chair. A washroom facility like this is generally better serviced in an area where there is quite a bit of public traffic, just from a security perspective, and also from a maintenance perspective. Other locations that we researched, these facilities are generally located in a downtown area, somewhere where there is quite a bit of foot traffic. But visibility is key in determining location, and we would definitely need stakeholder engagement in order to find an appropriate location for these facilities.
Okay, and a follow-up question, Mr. Chair. In the report, you indicated that staff have identified ongoing maintenance and security concerns. Are you referring to the self-cleaning washrooms or other washrooms?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the self-cleaning washroom has a lot of mechanical automated components with it. We've done very limited research on it based on the timeframes that we had. However, we are suspecting, similar to any other mechanical systems that the city owns, that regular maintenance would be required in ensuring the proper operation of the facility.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Porter to the amendment.
Thank you, Chair Cisco. I certainly agree with all of Councillor Miller's points regarding the need for this in the community. I was glad to see this letter from the faith community asking us to make a bold decision and provide more public facilities for people. And they speak to the feces, the urine, the rats everywhere along creeks and along some of their houses of worship. So I think this is really important. I do think it's really not a bad idea to place these facilities in a place like Centennial Park. If you Google Centennial Gardens, you'll see 255 Google reviews. People absolutely love this park. It is home to community gardens. There's disc golf. People come from away from Toronto to go for a walk and connect into the Merritt Trail. That being said, this letter from several people from the faith community did not specifically say where this facility should be, and they said there needs to be some engagement with the community. So I actually think, as much as I think it should go into Centennial Gardens, I do think they're asking us for some consultation with stakeholders, and staff are also recommending consultation with stakeholders. I think we should do that very quickly, budget for it, approve it, and do the stakeholder consultation now so we can make a decision in a couple of months on where this should go. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Dodge to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some, when we're speaking about stakeholders and whatnot, I don't know whether this could be added to the amendment, but I'm wondering if, you know, because of the demographics of the people that we're trying to help out here, and them, you know, maybe not having facilities of their own, if we could maybe ask from the city of St. Catharines that the region consider cost sharing on some of this capital cost for construction of a seasoned public washroom to be made available to the general public.
Okay. I'm assuming, Councillor Miller, that doesn't.
Well, I think for the standalone washroom, for the self-contained unit, in my opinion, it's probably too late for that. For the long-term permanent washroom, 100%. So I guess I don't really know what to say. I certainly would love the region to do it, but I don't want to under budget for something and then have the region not come to the table on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're speaking of maybe more than one place. I just think that, you know, the city should go to the region, and while we're talking about this is a good time to bring that forward.
Sure. Yeah, like, I guess I still, you know, I think our budget item, I guess, as long as it doesn't change the amount we're budgeting for, then I think that's friendly.
Okay.
Can I suggest? Yeah, okay. I think the wording there, make sure that it doesn't affect the specifics of this particular washroom that we're speaking to.
So this is that amendment specific to future washroom construction?
It could be to this and as well as future.
My concern would be, Councillor Dodge, is if we try to tie it to this particular washroom, then the timeline probably doesn't work for what Councillor Miller is looking for. And I don't want to speak for Councillor Miller, but entering into cost sharing agreements is going to take a significant amount of time, and I'll look to staff if they can maybe comment on that. Mr. Oak?
Yeah, Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. We have had some very informal staff to staff discussions on this particular issue. Recognizing the, the relationship we have with the region through community services and the population and the types of services. So I'm not sure the specifics of, how they would potentially address the request through their committee. But we could certainly, have that discussion with them and try to work through some sort of cost sharing, whether it's for this project or any other future project. Understanding that the budget, our capital budget hasn't been reduced, if that's my understanding, to Councillor Miller's concern.
I'm seeing nods of agreement from Councillor Miller.
Okay.
Okay, so Councillor Dodge, do we want to make this for future projects?
I think the sooner that we ask for this, I mean, if we're working on our budget, they're probably working on their budget. And if they would even consider it for like the same time frame as us, I think we leave it in there and ask as soon as possible.
Okay. All right. I believe Mr. Smith had some comments with respect to the amendment, and I'm going to go to Mr. Smith with respect to staffing and ongoing maintenance. And then I still have Councillors Garcia, Littleton, and Phillips, but I think there were timely comments. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of points. It sounds like it's council's intention to make this washroom available year-round. And one of the things that we will need to consider in the location is maintaining an access to the washrooms year-round. And Centennial Park at this point is not maintained in the winter, neither the parking lot or the trail system. So if we are going to do that, there will be some implications to the operation budget, which I will have to bring back to this committee for discussion.
Okay, and looking to the mover, Councillor Miller, your motion says that it be placed in the area with the specific location to be chosen in consultation with stakeholders. I assume that that's also to include the staff recommendation based on logistics for actually servicing this washroom, yes?
Yes, like I said, I think we should be committing to an area that's walkable from Centennial Gardens. Obviously, if staff come out and say, look, there's absolutely no way we can do this, that I don't think it blows this whole thing up. I think the first look should be in that area, as for the reasons I already spoke to. But
yep, okay.
Yeah, staff are key stakeholders, obviously, and would be involved in the discussion about where to put it.
I'm glad we've listed them as a key stakeholder. All right, Councillors Garcia, Littleton, Phillips, Townsend, and Sorrento to the amendment specifically. So Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some clarification because Councillor Sorrento had an amendment and then Councillor Miller. Councillor Miller's amendment is talking about the placement of this self-contained washroom, but if that amendment were defeated, does that essentially remove the self-contained washroom from the budget, or if that's just the location that we're defeating?
If this amendment were defeated, then the staff, as the report lays out, would be what we would be voting on. But if this is defeated, then we would deal with Councillor Sorrento's amendment immediately after. We're going to deal with the self-contained washroom and anything outside of the scope of the staff report before we move on to the rest of the report at this point.
Right. So in other words, just to confirm, so if Councillor Miller's amendment was defeated, that would not necessarily remove it from the budget. Yeah.
That's correct. It would simply be not going with the alteration of the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Littleton, and followed by Councillor Phillips and Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, I think some of the things that have been said, for example, from Councillor Porter are very important. I think that it's important that we do have one of these units that is in the budget. And the reason why I would love to see it, this is my ward that we're talking about, and I didn't make it friendly because of the Centennial Gardens portion of it. And I just want to speak to that. And I think I'm going to speak as a 5'1" and 105-pound woman. When you put something in a public area that is, I'm sorry, it's going to upset me. When I use the bathrooms at Lancaster Park, I've used them because my daughters are playing soccer. So that park is an active park. It is a well-lit park. When it's open, there's lots of people around. There's baseball teams, so there's 2 teams. There's the spectators of those teams. I don't know how many people are on a baseball team, but let's say 15. So there's 30 players plus coaches plus spectators. On a soccer field, there's 11 players, so there's 22 at any one time, plus you might have 6 on a bench, plus the spectators. Now we're talking about 50 to 60 people around. And I'm nervous to use the bathroom at Lancaster Park. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And the idea of putting a bathroom in a park that is a secluded park that does not have proper lighting, that must be closed at dusk, is not something I think the city should do. I recognize that we need to talk about dignity and access to facilities from people, all people in our city, our neighbors that live in the Queenston area, our neighbors who are living rough right now, and we absolutely need to do something for them. But I would really like to see the conversation be, we put this in the budget, we sit down with the faith-based communities, we talk about how they can open their doors, how we can, I know Mr. Oakes already spoke about this and the trickiness of it, but this is a community solution. And I think if the city is going to come with the facility, I think we really need to be careful about where it's going. And so that is the only reason why that was unfriendly for me. We cannot put it in Centennial Gardens. And that is, for me, it's a no-go. So I'm sorry for getting emotional, but thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Councillor Littleton eloquently spoke about a lot of what my concerns are. To Director Martuccio, in your research on these washrooms, how long do they last, if you want, without significant maintenance or before they have to be replaced?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the facilities that we researched are fairly new. These are new facilities that have only been on the market probably a couple of years, to my knowledge. From what we understand, they originated in Europe and have been slowly coming to North America. There's facilities in the United States, Europe. There's only a couple locations in Canada where they're installed. So with regards to overall life of the facility, we don't have that information at this time. But just based on experience from having to deal with our facilities that are non-mechanical and don't have moving parts or systems associated with them, we're expecting that this type of facility will have a significant amount of operating costs that go along with it, just from a repair and overall service, regular preventative maintenance type service that's required for it.
Okay, and does it need, like, you have to, I would imagine, have to have a water source to service as far as the self-cleaning mechanism is concerned? And flushing, so you have to have a direct water line going to it, obviously.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, yes, all services are required for this facility. You still need water, electricity, gas, if it's heated with gas. So it requires the same services as any other all-season type facility.
And that's included in the costs that you've indicated in the 500,000.
Yes, that's the cost that we put together.
Okay, I agree with Councillor Littleton. If this goes ahead, staff should be responsible for determining where it goes. I have significant concerns about Centennial Park because, and not to be facetious at all, but if you build it, they will come. And you're going, if you put one down there, you're going to attract more people who are living rough, perhaps. You're going to have more tents down there. And we spent a lot of money on Centennial Park. We have a lot of plans for Centennial Park. These folks that are living rough, though, we don't need a community of them, any more people down there than what's all. We should be encouraging them to try and find other places, hopefully housing. So yeah, Centennial Park to me should not be an option, especially with the former General Hospital site being developed. I don't think we need more people living rough down there. And with plan to build a permanent structure down there in subsequent years, with this already spending, if we're going to spend 500,000 putting it there, and then we're going to put another million into a permanent structure, I think Centennial Park is not the place. We had problems with, when I was on the library board with Councillor Williamson, we had to hire security because the washrooms there were being misused terribly. And our security staff were being threatened, and there was drug paraphernalia found. There was overdoses happening in there. So it was a real concern. And that was in a lit area, in a lit building. As Councillor Littleton pointed out, to have it in Centennial Park to me is without security, without lighting, could be tragic. So I'm not sure that we should go ahead with it, but it's something that council will determine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. I'm looking to Councillor Miller. Would it be possible to change the wording of the motion that it be placed in the Queenston area within walking distance of Centennial Gardens Park? Would that be acceptable?
That's fine. I guess I'm not, yes. As long as the park is still going to be considered, because that area, again, the area off Oakdale is very well lit by streetlights. It's very well trafficked by cars. I'm not talking about putting it smack dab in the center or putting it anywhere. It's a huge park. So yes, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Leave it at that.
And I appreciate that. I hope that mitigates some of the concerns that have been expressed. And I think it does also still leave to the consultation of the stakeholders like the Queenston neighbors and other folks in the neighborhood. It leaves that opportunity for greater consultation to take place and to find the optimal place for it. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair Cisco, through you. My question would be, well, first off, I'll say that I appreciate the amendment that was just made. My question, though, is in regards to the 24-hour access to the washrooms. Did I understand that correctly, that the washrooms would be available 24 hours a day?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the facilities that we've researched are rather open 24 hours a day. They have timed access for use. You can set the time 15 minutes and then it shuts down for a cleaning and then becomes open again. It's an automated system, so there's you can modify it to the needs of the community.
Okay, so through you, Chair Cisco, I have just looked up some of the ones that they have in cities of Toronto and Montreal. The ones that they have there are not 24 hours. I guess my concern with this is just I'm trying to get my understanding around it. The safety aspect. If people are able to access these washrooms 24/7, I mean, is that common for washrooms to be available 24/7? The reason I bring it up is I think of like Pearson Park, where I know the city does close those washrooms down at a certain time.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, you're correct that at other city facilities, there's certain times of the day when those facilities are open. As I mentioned, the facilities that are automated, we can program them to whatever is desired by the community or by council. If you want them to be shut down at a certain time, they can be programmed to do that as well.
Okay, and last question through you, Chair. How do you, like, I'm just thinking in the sense of like, I'm thinking off the top of my head, how would you avoid anyone from congregating or staying in the washroom? Like how would you avoid that is my question.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, that's a great question. That is definitely something that we're going to have to deal with when the time comes, but we can't control human habit. We can only control what the actual automated facility does. So like I said, it's if we decide to program it for every 15 minutes and someone's there and it causes damage to any of the systems or the doors or anything like that, that's just something we'll have to deal with through a repair or other type service.
So currently, sorry, through you, Chair, currently, like I'm putting Pearson Park out there. Those washrooms are monitored by city staff. They make sure that they are not being destroyed. My concern is if we are putting this washroom in, spending probably around $750,000 plus, how do we avoid any type of damage from happening? Because there's no one really monitoring this.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I may look to Director Smith for his assistance. His staff are generally the ones that do the rounds in terms of staff that go around to the various parks to ensure that things are secure. Or we could also look at engaging security as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So any facility or park that we close at a specific time, we have city staff that go in and ensure that it's cleared before it's locked. Like Pearson Park is a prime example. We make sure those washrooms are empty before we lock them up for the night. And that would be the recommendation that we would do if this facility was not going to be kept open 24/7. We would have to have a staff member go by before we lock them up for the night to make sure they were empty. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to lock them.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And through the Chair, I guess that, I'm not trying to be cynical here, but I mean, you look at basketball courts in some of the parts of the city and they are destroyed. I think it's important for us to maintain and make sure that our facilities are continued to be looked after. And, because at the end of the day, when things are destroyed, it only comes out of the taxpayer pocket. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilor Townsend. Mr. Mayor.
And thank you, Chair. And I don't, as following up on Councilor Townsend, I don't think that there is nothing in the motion that we're approving today that's binding council or staff to 24-hour washrooms. I think it's a request that has been made, but nothing, and I'll ask this, I guess, to the budget chair, to the clerk. There's nothing in here that binds us to 24 hours, correct?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay, so those are the kind of discussions that'll come out after there's a decision about the self-cleaning. And as someone who has been through these facilities, not just in Canada, but in different European cities, the reality is that if we've learned nothing from COVID, one thing is we need to be able to provide better access to public washrooms. And we need to understand that through the chair, that this isn't about just serving a specific segment of the community. It's about creating access for everybody. And that's why location is going to be important as well. When we look at how people move about a city, whether you're on a bike, whether you're running, whether you're walking with your kids, I would argue there's not many places that the public can access if they need to. They need to do what they need to do. And you go to any future thinking communities, there's many more opportunities for washrooms. So I just want to compliment staff and say thank you to Director Martuccio and his team. When we think about what does a post-COVID St. Catharines look like, this is the kind of thinking that is going to move us forward and give everybody who's exploring our community an opportunity when nature calls to be able to be in a place that, as Councillor Littleton has talked about, needs to be safe, but it also is going to be a place that people can safely do what they need to do. So I just want to say thank you to the staff and for Councillor Miller for bringing this forward as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Dodge for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Procedurally, I wanted to ask a question.
Mhm.
So my amendment is tied into Councillor Miller's amendment. If that loses, does that mean that my motion loses as well, and then we can't bring that back again? Because I really think that it's important that we try to get something together as the region, as one of our partners in whatever we do in the washroom area.
I think we can request that they be split when we vote on them right now. I think that there would probably, and without prejudging, there's generally fairly good consensus around the table that we should be looking to partner with the region on costs whenever we can. So I will ask the clerk that we split that when we vote momentarily on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Seeing no other hands, then I'm going to look to the clerk to call the roll on Councillor Miller's amendment. If you are voting in favor of this, and you are voting in favor of the self-contained washroom being placed in the Queenston area within walking distance of Centennial Gardens, with a specific location to be chosen in consultation with key stakeholders like the Queenston neighbors, local service providers, and faith groups. Deputy Clerk.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
No.
Councillor Littleton,
No.
Councillor Phillips,
No.
Councillor Dodge,
No.
Mayor Senzik,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
No.
Councillor Williamson,
No.
Chair Cisco,
Yes.
and that's carried. Oh, sorry, let me count.
Do I get the vote?
Councillor Garcia,
No.
and that's lost.
Okay. I'm going to look now that we vote on Councillor Dodge's portion of that amendment, that the city requests that the region share the cost of future permanent washrooms available to general public.
Councillor Dodge,
Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Dodge. Mr. Mayor.
Chair, if there can be, FCM also has funding for public washrooms. So if at least there can be addition that FCM also be, that staff work with FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They've been, as part of their COVID-19 resiliency funding, they've added washrooms as an applicable cost.
Okay. Councillor Dodge, I'm assuming that's.
Yes.
Okay. So Deputy Clerk.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yeah, I have a point of order. I'm sorry.
Oh,
So can I ask it, or I have to do this right now?
What's the point of order, Councillor Littleton?
I'm just making sure that the washroom, that it goes back to it's that back at the staff. Okay, I'm sorry.
Staff recommendation as of right now.
That's what I thought. Okay, yes.
Okay.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yeah.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
Mayor Senzik,
Yes.
Chair Cisco,
Yes.
and that's carried.
All right. We're going to deal with Councillor Sorrento's amendment that the self-contained washroom be. Okay. I'm looking at the clerk. What is the wording that we're going to use here so that we can deal with the self-contained washroom and move on?
We're just going to have a separate vote on including the self-contained washroom in the draft budget.
Okay. Can we do that now?
Yes.
Okay. Let's do it.
Chair,
Yes,
with your
Councillor
permission,
Sorrento.
procedure, am I allowed to speak to this amendment specifically?
It is an amendment and you introduced it, so you can speak to it. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Not to be insensitive, and I thought about this very long and hard. and had some conversations around it, and I really struggled with it, Chair. And so I just want you to know why I'm not able to support this particular ask in the budget, this amendment, okay, for many reasons. One of which, Deputy CAO Oakes mentioned that we're working on partnerships. Chair, I'm not going to say the place, but I know of another place downtown here that has a bathroom, a shower, and possibly a washer and dryer, which I'll be happy to impart to Director Oakes later on. So I think that we need to focus more on the partnership, okay? Just within the Queenston area and the downtown area, Chair, we have in the morning the breakfast program at St. George's Church, which allows for a possibility, an opportunity for our people in need to access a washroom. Lunchtime, there is a Knights of Columbus, another opportunity to access the washrooms. There's the other cold at night. There's a YWCA for the ladies. There's a Salvation Army for the men. There's Positive Living. There's Start Me Up, St. Barnabas Church. And there are plenty of areas and places, not to mention our washrooms, I believe, are open during the day now, and I'll stand corrected. So I really struggled with it. And to Councillor Miller's point, I'll just say this, he talks about the dignity, and which I completely agree with. But you know what? We have a porta potty out at the cemetery, and I think those people deserve a lot of dignity too. And they use that porta potty, no problem. So I'll just one other point, Chair. Last year, we had a meeting at Robertson Hall. This was pre-COVID, and it was with the issues with our houseless people, if that's a politically correct and respectful term. I just heard it tonight. And there was problem with feces pre-COVID, when the washrooms were open, when people had access to all of these places to go. So I really do struggle with this one, respectfully, Chair. So I just can't support it. I just can't support it. So thank you for the opportunity to speak and for the amendment.
Councilor Sorrento, Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak to that amendment as well, and I want to thank Councilor Sorrento for bringing it up. I cannot support it for similar reasons, but also, as I got the answers to my questions earlier, if it just seems like a very large expenditure when we consider that we're looking at technology that is somewhat improving, we don't know what the operating costs are going to be. We don't know about a lot of the problems we could have. And based on what Director Martuccio said, if we needed to, for that amount of money, we could build two separate washrooms similar with one stall and one sink, which would have to be cleaned, but at least when they have to be cleaned, that protects them as well as opposed to being on their own. And also what Councilor Sorrento mentioned about the partnerships, which I raised as well before. I think that's the focus we should have. And also for that amount of money, we could do lots of porta potties and solve the problem quickly. So I cannot support that. I will support the amendment. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Garcia. Councilor Miller.
Yeah, I just, I will, I'm not a very emotional person, and so I can feel myself getting upset. So I will try to keep this brief and succinct. I think we need to be very careful about the things that we're saying tonight. One of the most difficult parts of my job is dealing with residents who call me about people living rough and say horrific and non-compassionate things about them. And I think what we're doing tonight around this table is we're stigmatizing those people who we are forcing as a society, we are collectively forcing to live on the street, forcing to defecate and urinate in public and in streets and things like this. And so it's all well and good to say, we don't want people congregating in my ward on Queenston Street and Centennial Gardens. But to be perfectly honest with you, there's about 4 of us around this table that are constantly pushing for ways to deal with that. And the region doesn't want to do anything about it. And the province doesn't want to do anything about it. So incredibly frustrating for me to hear people complaining about that and stigmatizing these people who live in our community and frankly aren't willing to do a lot of the heavy lifting and spend the money because, you know, we created this capitalist world. Money makes the world go round to actually address these issues. Instead, we're saying we don't want people to congregate in our community, that we're worried that they're going to destroy our public facilities. It's just, I understand the concerns around safety. But we can address houselessness and poverty and these things and provide public washrooms. It's not one or the other. We can provide them dignity and somewhere to go to the bathroom, and then also address poverty and houselessness. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Porter.
Thank you, Chair Cisco. I guess I have a few similar comments. We all poop, and these facilities would be for everybody. And we really have to have that mindset. It's not just for one subset of the population. The pandemic has made the need for public washrooms more clear because most of us rely on publicly available washrooms that are in private places. And I don't really consider a church a public place. If I was out with my kids going for a walk somewhere and I had to run to the bathroom, it would be so much better. Like they have in many other countries, they'd have public washrooms that are very public and they're for everybody. It's important for preventing disease. It's important for easing inequality. And we're building a livable city for the future. You have to have public amenities and public facilities when you're encouraging people to go out and use active transportation trails. Most of us drive cars, and so we're very used to stopping at Tim Hortons and going to the washroom, but I don't represent everybody. A lot of people don't have a car, they have mobility issues, and I think that it's not just a bathroom for people who are homeless, it's going to be really a bathroom for everybody, and homeless people should be able to use the bathrooms everywhere as well. I think we're reducing inequality with this decision. It's not just our city that needs more public washrooms, it's become apparent. And there are tons of news stories from across the country how this is a problem and that cities need to address it. So I think it's very important that we fund this. And I think the conversation shouldn't end with just this washroom. I think we're going to need to continue. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Porter. Councilor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's some confusion. I've heard nobody talk against public washrooms. I think we're all in favor of more public washrooms, but here we're talking about a self-cleaning washroom, and the director has already indicated the staff have identified ongoing maintenance and security concerns. And because of that, the motion to approve them is premature, and therefore I support the amendment made by Councillor Sorrento. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair Cisco. This is a very healthy discussion that we are having right now. But we have heard, over and over again tonight that there is a need right now. You look through this pandemic, more and more people have been out using trails, parks, splash pads, pools. These facilities are needed. I've heard a lot of talk about porta potties being a great solution. Porta potties are temporary solutions. And if we want to send a message to our residents, we need to build facilities that are permanent structures that are there permanently all the time, not temporary. And these facilities that we're talking about are facilities that can offer a lot more than what a porta potty can. So I will be not supporting removing of the self-contained washrooms from the budget, because as we've heard tonight, it is a very important need right now. As there's letters that have been sent asking for it. I do want to ask though about the wording of the actual amendment that's put in there. Will that be changed just to make it a little bit more clear as what the ask is?
When the time comes for the vote, I'm going to ensure that we are all very clear about what a yes vote and a no vote mean. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sorrento, you have spoken already, so I'm going to go to the first time speakers first. Councillor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted clarification because in the report, there's two figures there. One was for 750 and one was for 500,000. Which one is Councillor Sorrento referring to?
Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Chair. I thought the question would be directed to the staff. It's the self-contained one, I believe, the one for 500,000.
Okay, thank you. I just needed clarification. I wasn't sure which one we were speaking of. Thank you.
A couple of numbers have been thrown around, have been used, and not always the same ones. So I understand. Councillor Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say I'll be voting against this amendment. I absolutely think that it is important that we have more public washrooms. And I do agree with what people have said before me, that the pandemic has certainly shown us the deficiencies that we have in our community. And I actually think that this is a good step. I think it's good if let's get one of them and see how it goes, because if this works and it's a positive thing, this is a lot less expensive than a permanent structure. And again, like Councillor Miller mentioned, it could be moved. So if we need to move it because the demographics change, or we build a permanent structure, then we can move this structure, this washroom somewhere else. I think that's a great way to go. So I will not be supporting the motion. I also wanted to say that I have as well used these types of facilities in Europe, and they're great. They're great. And sometimes they can be right on a busy street, it's right there. And if you don't even know what you're looking for, you might miss it. Like they can be very interesting structures. So I will not be supporting this motion. I do agree that we need to fund one of them for next year. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Sendzik.
Thank you, Councillor Cisco. And I can't add anything more than what Councillor Townsend and Councillor Littleton have just said about the need in the community. And again, as someone who runs, just like other members of council, I can say that when you choose your running routes, you're also looking for places that have public bathrooms on there. And this is what the future is going to look like, is more of these self-cleaning. And I got a question for Director Martuccio. Can you just speak, because I think some councillors may be concerned about the maintenance and security, but speak to that cost, because there is already a cost for maintaining an existing bathroom, as we've seen in places like Montebello Park, and the security concerns. So can you just address that in a more clear way so that it doesn't come across, because right now it comes across as that the cost is astronomical between the two, and they're not.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I can start with that, and then I'll defer to Director Smith to also provide some comment on it. Yeah, the part of security really has two phases. The one is making sure that it's located in the appropriate location so that there's a public presence to help with the overall security of the facility. So choosing the appropriate location is key in building one of these types of facilities. If there's continued abuse of the washrooms, which we experience at all of our public facilities, not only washrooms, but it happens even at, in our arenas and other facilities, there may be a time where we need to bring on security to curtail that type of behavior. But with regards to maintenance, it's just like any other facility that is open all year round. We do have to do regular checks on the facility, just from an insurance perspective, and to make sure that the facilities are secure and continuously operating. And if something does go wrong for any reason, just like any other facility, we would have to go in and conduct those repairs. So the only added cost with this would be, like I said, would be the preventative type maintenance that is probably required for the mechanical systems. But as I mentioned to you before, our research on this is very limited. We did reach out to a few manufacturers, but didn't receive a call back. So we'll be learning more as the process develops.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can continue. So for the most part, when we have washroom facilities in parks, we have their maintenance contained within the park budget. So if we have situations where we have high rates of abuse, normally what we end up doing is diverting resources from other things that they would do in the park to deal with that situation in the washroom. That is a way to control the budget impact, to make sure that we are, being careful stewards of the money that's allocated to those facilities. As Director Martuccio has already stated, at times we have to bring in security, which would be an additional cost over and above what we have. But as we've seen this year, it's not a significant cost per facility once you have the security established. The only additional cost that I would say would be something we would have to consider would be if we intend to locate this washroom, as I spoke before, in an area that we normally don't do winter maintenance now, that we'd have to start doing winter maintenance for. There would be some incremental cost associated with that. But as Director Martuccio has correctly pointed out, all our facilities at this time are subject to abuse of some sort that we deal with on a normal basis.
Okay, Chair, and thank you for the answers. I can say, as someone who's gone through these new style of self-cleaning bathrooms, they're made of complete stainless steel inside. That's what allows them to be self-cleaning. They're very difficult to destroy, very difficult to do any kind of significant damage. So it would actually reduce the maintenance cost, and it would actually reduce the upkeep, because you wouldn't have to have someone there every 3 hours cleaning the thing out with a self-cleaning one. So I just want to put that out there, because I don't want councillors to think that this is going to drive up significantly maintenance and security. I believe if we choose the right model, it's not going to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cisco, you're muted.
I'm sorry. My apologies. Councillor Sorrento, you have already spoken. So at this point, it would have to be for clarification purposes.
Chair, it's a point of privilege.
Point of privilege, okay.
Okay, and I let it go before, right after Councillor Miller spoke, okay? So I just want to provide a little clarification here, Chair, with your permission. When we had that meeting at Robertson Hall over a year ago about the opioid issue, Chair, I believe you were there, and perhaps Councillor Porter,
yep.
And I was just merely stating that what I said before happened. Could be anybody. Incontinence is a big deal. So I'm not trying to say that just homeless people can do that. I know it was an issue. I can tell you, Chair, that one washroom is not going to make the problem go away. But I was just merely stating that. And for a frame of reference, I used to be an outreach worker for nearly 3 years. I know you don't want to hear about people's careers, but I'm as sensitive to this and probably know more about outreach than most people around that table, with the exception of maybe Councillor Porter, possibly. So I just want you to know I'm very serious to it, very sensitive to it, Chair. And I didn't mean to center out any particular group. I was just merely repeating what the business owners downtown said. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. For clarity's sake, I'm going to look to the Deputy Clerk. Can you explain what a yes vote means and what a no vote means on this amendment?
Yeah, so through the chair, back when the motion was originally brought forward a little while ago, there was a concern that handling it as an amendment to remove it from the draft budget would be contrary to the main motion. And there was a short discussion to handle this instead as a separate vote, not as an amendment. So what this would mean is it would be a separate vote on the staff recommendation. And the staff recommendation is to include the self-contained washroom in the draft budget. That means voting yes would include the washroom in the draft budget, and voting no would mean that your opinion is to remove the washroom from the draft budget.
So everybody is clear. A yes vote at this time means to include the self-cleaning washroom, and a no vote means to remove the self-cleaning washroom. Okay.
Chair, do we need to put 500,000 in there or no?
No.
No.
Okay.
Porter, do you have a question?
I just have I guess, a point of clarification. I just think we should add the verb to include or to keep the self-contained washroom in the draft budget. That should be what it says.
To maintain the
Or to
self-contained washroom in the draft. Can we put that in?
Yeah, just
clerk?
want to make sure we're all crystal clear.
Yes. Okay.
Chair, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, any other clarification comments? So a yes vote means to maintain the self-contained washroom. A no vote means to remove the self-contained washroom. Before I call then I will simply say this. Councillor Miller referenced that I will share a little bit of my own personal experience as a councillor. On a daily basis, I, Councillor Porter, several other folks who are in this meeting receive emails from residents within our community who identify a number of serious problems. And one of the regular points is that there is feces within our community that people don't have anywhere to go. For someone like me, it's easy for me to walk into a Tim Hortons or a Starbucks and use the washroom there and purchase a coffee and be on my way. But there is a large contingent in our community, and COVID has made it even more apparent and obvious that if they were to try and do that, would be told to leave, would be harassed out of the building. And the reality is that there are not public facilities around. I think as a council and as a community, we have to recognize that we need to build the public infrastructure, which is necessary, not just for them, but for anybody. The mayor mentioned it. I'm a runner as well. And I plan my routes very specifically about being able to access washroom facilities because that becomes a necessity on some runs. So this isn't just for that segment of our community that is living rough, that is without a home. It benefits everybody, but at the end of the day, it's a significant improvement for the way of life of many of our community who are already living with a serious lack of advantages. And with that, I'll look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Sorrento.
No.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Sorry, my button wouldn't come on. No.
Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
No.
Councillor Kushner.
No.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
No.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Chair Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right, so we're going back to the main motion. I did have a speakers list, and Councillor Miller, as promised, you still have the floor. Just so everybody who was on the list is aware, after Councillor Miller will be Councillor Williamson to the main motion, then Councillor Townsend, then Councillor Kushner, then Councillor Porter, then Councillor Dodge. So those were who I had. If you are not on that list, but you would still like to speak to the main motion, please hit the raise hand icon. But to everybody else, I have you listed and I will go in that order. Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Just a couple questions for you, the chair. With regards to the trails and the list of trails, I know sometime in the last 12 months, we were talking about updating 12 Mile Creek as well, sort of specifically in the area around Glendale, Pelham Road. Is that, so are those upgrades still planned, or is that going to be something we're looking at far in the future or next budget cycle?
For you, Mr. Budget Chair, maybe I can start with that, and then if Phil has anything to add, he can add it. No, that the upgrades to the 12 Mile Trail are not currently included in the budget. I'm without taking a closer look at that, I wouldn't be able to provide you with right now with when those will be happening.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, I think if I recall, we made a pretty significant investment in that area. So with the idea that we were going to upgrade that trail, so I certainly hope we're looking at that in the near future. Just with regard to the splash pad, both the money that's in the budget now and in the future, just there's some mention of $1 million in the future for a splash pad. Is that how much we spent at Bogart, or how much we spent at Pearson, or how much, because all these splash pads are obviously different sizes. What's the difference between the one we have, say, in Western Hill there, off Pelham Road, and the one at Pearson Park, cost-wise?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the $1 million price tag that you see as part of this report speaks to a splash pad project that includes a washroom to go with it. So, for example, the most recent splash pad installation at Bogart Street at the Port Weller Community Center, we didn't need to build a new washroom because there's a washroom in the building. Although we did do upgrades to the building, but a new build for a washroom facility was not necessary. So that's what you're looking at. Without having the exact numbers in front of me, I can say that the West Park facility, the new washroom and the splash pad were probably close to 900,000 as well, maybe 8. And don't forget that that was opened a couple of years back now. So yeah, so I just want to highlight that big number, it does include the washroom facility as well.
Okay, because I know we've been talking about the need for a splash pad in each ward, and obviously Meriton doesn't have one right now. I guess I would point out for people watching and for future reference that there's lots of great locations in Meriton, Secord Woods, Clifford's Creek, near Jean Sauvé School. But I think it should be noted that Lion Dunk Pool already has a washroom change facility, so we might get some cost savings there as well. Just with regards to, I think this is my final question. With regards to the Chestnut Street extension, I'm very happy to see that was in recommendation. I think that'll help move that project forward if necessary. Could I guess through the chair, Director Martuccio, just for the public, could you just touch on the process that this $150,000, we would still need to do some public consultation and things like this, I believe, around if an extension is recommended?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, that is correct. The Chestnut Street extension is to connect Chestnut Street West with East, I believe is what they're called. The first step in the process is to conduct a municipal class environmental assessment, which basically allows us to run through the various scenarios, do stakeholder engagement, so that we can better understand what the needs of the community are, what environmental impacts they would have. And then at the end of the process, it would identify the design of choice for us to proceed on to conceptual design and then detailed design followed by construction.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I guess just to make it clear to the public that including this $150,000 in the budget doesn't necessarily mean Chestnut Street East and West are going to be connected, but it means we have that option if it's recommended. But there'll still be lots and lots and lots of opportunity for public input. So thank you for that, Director Martuccio, and that's it.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Looking to Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Budget, Standing Committee Budget Chair. The question ultimately will go to the Director of Financial Management Services, but there's a bit of a preamble, and it relates to the theme we talked about with a gentleman from the Construction Association, and that is I'm looking at an Infrastructure Canada website, and it's got this sexy list of 7 different investing in Canada plan programs on top of the ongoing programs. And there was, like I said, much talk about this massive infusion of money for capital projects. And my question ultimately is, as a municipality, has the money that's been filtered down from the province from the federal government to the province to us, has it met our expectations, or were we hoping or thinking we were going to get more money than what we've gotten?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, with regards to government grants for the city's infrastructure, and perhaps Director Martuccio can provide additional information, but I'll begin. As we heard in the presentation that was made by staff on October the 21st, the city does still continue to have a significant infrastructure deficit with regards to our assets. And we are always looking and for support from upper levels of government to address that infrastructure deficit. With regards to the funding that we have received, we have received some funding throughout the pandemic to help with businesses within the community. We have received some funding for the municipal tax levy portion. We've received funding for our transit operations. We have received some funding here with the ICIP. So there is funding flowing. I think for all of us, this is something that we have never dealt with before. And would we like to see more funding? Obviously, yes. We would love to see more funding, but at the same time, we continue to apply for funding that becomes available. And as I indicated, we do have an infrastructure deficit. And if there are programs that come available and more funding available, then the city is always applying for any funds that do become available.
Thank you very much. My next question is to Mr. Martuccio. And we're putting off significant investments in Robertson School improvements. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with it, but by putting them off, are we going to add to future costs? We're going to have to do more rehabilitation, or what's your thought on that?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the funds that we've reprioritized for future years are strictly to deal with accessibility upgrades. So it was the installation of an elevator and renovations to the washrooms for accessible needs. We still have maintained funds in there to address high priority concerns such as structural deficiencies to the annex building. Every year that we delay a project, there's the chance that it goes up in cost, but we don't foresee any other issues other than potential additional costs.
Thank you. In terms of the library gates, we know that the library is undergoing a pretty significant change in terms of how we're going to use space there. I just wonder if you could describe, you mentioned them, the Church Street gate. So this is going to enclose that area on the south side of the library. Is that the idea, Mr. Martuccio?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, yes, it's that area that's covered like a canopy on the Church Street side. It is not going to be totally enclosed. We do plan on installing fence in areas where there's ways of getting over the railing. However, only in the sections where we need to mitigate people entering that after hours is where we plan on fencing it off.
Thank you. I got to say, I'm very pleased with the investment proposed in the trails. I got one question on that through you, Mr. Martuccio. And as a person who cycles, and I won't say I run anymore, I maybe saunter and walk a lot, particularly in the north end of the city, often to the lake, both towards Port Weller and to Port Dalhousie and places in between, because it's a magnificent asset that I think we take for granted, a lot of the trails that we already have. Are we also, the Welland Canal Parkway surface in certain areas is starting to show its age. Are we looking towards future budget capital expenditures to rehab the Welland Canal Parkway in the future?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, every year we have an allocation for active transportation. Our funds this year obviously are going towards the Grantham Rail Trail. But our future budgets will be allocated, or the intention is to allocate them towards doing asset renewal projects on the Welland Canal Parkway Trail.
Right. And I'm also an advocate as much as possible as to making these pedestrian and cycling trails. And by the way, there's conflicts between cyclists and pedestrians in a lot of these places, particularly on the Welland Canal Parkway, that we still have to deal with. Mainly because cyclists don't use bells or buzzers to warn that they're coming by. Or oftentimes that's been our experience. But anyway, I am an advocate for as much off-road. And when we look at Arthur Street, we have Malcolmson Park Trail, which is the end of the old NS&T spur line trail that's being upgraded. You call it the Grantham Trail, Grantham Path. And you've got Walker's Creek and some other areas that are parallel. You still think it's a priority that Arthur Street see investment when we've got these other connections to the lake there through the northeast quadrant of the city?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, if you're referring to the bike lanes on Arthur Street, we're in the report, we're proposing them for consideration. In future budgets, we don't. Personally, our draft TMP, which some of you will see tomorrow, does not support bike lanes on Arthur Street because of the extensive trail network that is located in that part of the city. I think a better route would be to improving wayfinding so that residents and users of the trail system know how to navigate through the trail system.
Thank you. And my last question is in regard to the Lakeside Park walkway or waterfront trail. What is that? Where is that going, and what does that look like? What are we talking about there?
The work at Lakeside Park is to improve the connection between where the stairs were replaced about a couple years ago, and there's areas of that walkway that were damaged when we had the high lake levels. We also need to make that part of the trail more resilient to future flooding of the lake. So it's to make improvements to the lakefront trail there through Lakeside Park.
Good. Very happy to hear that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. Now, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair Cisco. Through you, I understand the average received through ICIP was just over $1 million, which would have been 1/10 of the ask. I know we'd originally asked for about 10 million. What is that kind of, is the 10% mark, 10% threshold, would that be the average on what a municipality might receive if they do apply for these types of projects?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to the ICIP funding, it is our understanding that the ICIP allocations were based similarly to the Safe Restart funding in phase 1, which was a household allocation that was made to the municipalities.
So through you, Chair, it would be fair to suggest that some municipalities would have received more than what we did receive based on population?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, if it was a household-based allocation, then municipalities with more households would receive larger amounts.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair, one of the concerns I do have is with the wording of the deferral around the Wood Street water main replacement there. I guess to Director Matuccio, the water main that was identified there as a need for replacement, at what point was that actually identified as a need for replacement?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, it was identified actually last year after some of the operations from Geneva Street, we moved over to Lake Street. We experienced a break in the water main that we couldn't repair. So we ended up having to cap that water main, which has now created a dead end in our system. That water main also runs through the Geneva Street property, which if we do divest ourselves of that property, would need to be relocated onto the right of way because it does loop the water main for that part of the city.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Chair, follow-up question to Director Martuccio. Knowing that last year it was repaired, how many times has it been repaired? And I guess my concern here is a Band-Aid over a Band-Aid over a Band-Aid. Is this the first time it's been repaired, or has this been an ongoing repair that has been happening for the city?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, sections of that water main, we've experienced multiple breaks, not just in that location, but other locations as well. That is why we are recommending the replacement of the entire section on Wood Street as well as Green Meadow, I believe is the name of the street. So,
Thank you. And another follow-up question through you, Chair. I guess my concern here is, you look at communities like Walkerton 20 years ago who had a contaminated water crisis. And when I do read words in the report that do suggest a risk to city water, it definitely catches my concern, because one of the basic needs, as Maslow would highlight, is a need for water. My concern is municipal neglect here, which is what happened in places like Walkerton and Flint. Knowing that it has been replaced, is this something that can be held off? I know that there is staff are recommending against deferring it. I guess it raises a serious concern for me when I read language in the report that suggests that it could cause a risk to our drinking water.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, we when we undertake water main repairs on breaks at various locations, there are procedures that we have in place to mitigate any contamination of the water. However, it's because it is dead-ended, the water quality at the end of the system is not ideal. However, Geneva Street is no longer occupied by staff, but we do want to ensure that we replace that asset prior to having any further concerns with it. I could also pass it on to Director Smith to add further comment to this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the way that you deal with dead ends in the system is you flush the line. So with respect to this, if this project is put off, then we would have an increased flushing program in that area, which would, again, there's an operational impact to that we would use through our budget.
Okay, thank you. I guess this is something that I'm very concerned with deferring. It's, I don't think you ever mess with people's drinking water, and it does raise a concern for me. So I'm assuming it does say deferral, but I don't want to see that deferred. So I would like to see that change to keep it included, because again, drinking water is a basic need here in our community.
Okay, so Councillor Townsend, you're making an amendment to include that project in the capital budget?
Yeah, and I'll let I'm hoping Councillor Sorrento will also speak to this, as well as I'm not sure what his concern is there as well.
Okay, let me just first check with Councillor Littleton if this would be a friendly amendment or not.
Point of order. I thought that the director said it was in.
It is included.
It is in the budget.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. I guess there was confusion the way it was written, because it's written as deferral. If you look on page 9, it's highlighted, underlined, and it says deferral. So, okay, if it is included, then I appreciate that. And thank you for answering my questions.
Yeah, my apologies there. Okay.
Thank you.
Then we're moving on to Councillor Kushner. Councillor Kushner, you have to unmute. Still need to unmute. Councillor, there you go.
Thank you. I did get it. With respect to the splash pad, there's $200,000 in design, and the cost is $800,000. Now that's a very high design fee. Why is it so high?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the $200,000 design fee is it's to address all the preliminary works that we need to do. So whether it's geotechnical investigation, surveying, designs, we do have a standard design. However, every site is unique and is serviced in a different way, as well as engaging with the utility companies to ensure that we have the proper utilities services available at the site that we choose. It's a budget, and some of those funds will go towards the construction if not all the design fees are used.
Thank you. And the second question I have, you said at one time that the bike lanes were not supported. Which ones are those?
The bike, through you, Mr. Budget Chair, it's the bike lanes on Arthur Street that were brought up at the general committee meeting on August 21st.
Okay, and why are you not supporting them?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, when staff reviewed the area, there's significant utility relocation of traffic signals, major reconstruction of the road that's required, as well as there's a very extensive trail network in that part of the city that reaches almost all the destinations, such as Sunset Beach and other locations in that part of town.
Now, if that were not approved, would you have an alternative to spend the money on?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, those funds are not being recommended as part of the 2021 capital budget. They were actually referred to as for consideration in future budgets.
Right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Porter, followed by Councillor Dodge, and then Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair Cisco. Through you to staff, I just want to say how pleased I am with the investment in the trail system, specifically the Merritt Trail and Fairview Park Trail, or also called John Page Park. I know Councillor Williamson has been talking about that park for a very long time. It's part of the old Welland Canal system as well. It's part of our city's heritage and industrial heritage, and it will become part of some important active or cycling infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure. So I want to say thank you for including that with some of the ICIP funding. I'm very excited about it. One of the things that's not in this budget, and I'm hoping would be a friendly amendment, is we talked about protected bike lanes in one of the last capital budget meetings. And in the future, we need to be building protected bike lanes with infrastructure so that there's a curb and cyclists are protected. You see cities all over the place around the world building really good cycling infrastructure. One of the reasons why we're facing such an infrastructure deficit is because we built cities in North America for the automobile, and then we built suburbs, and we don't have the tax base to support the infrastructure. We don't get the tax or the gas tax revenue to support this infrastructure from the federal government as well. One of the future forward-looking things we could do is to start building better cycling infrastructure. In this pandemic, you can't get a bicycle. Cycling sales have gone through the roof. All of the bicycles at Liberty Bicycles are sold out, and they have been for a very long time. People are buying bicycles en masse, and they're cycling everywhere. And we need to be building protected bike lanes. Other cities across North America are doing it cheaply. They're throwing up some bollards. So what I'm going to ask for is staff have looked into it and said that it costs about $9,000 for a kilometer of bollards for protected bike lanes. We don't really have a report in front of us, but I've cycled all through the city all summer with my 2 children and my husband. My kids are 10 and 12, and I could tell you where we have to put up these bollards. It's very dangerous to cycle in certain parts of our city. It's very dangerous for me to get to Port Dalhousie. No matter which way I go, I'm kind of making a choice. So there are certain specific intersections where we need to put them up. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the new bridge on Martindale. When you're coming to 4th Avenue, there's a bike lane there. Putting up bollards at these very busy intersections help motorists understand that they need to pay attention and they need to slow down. So I'm going to be asking that $36,000 be put in this budget so we can put up bollards, and when we can make cycling more safe in this community. If you build cycling infrastructure, people will cycle. And there's so many demonstrated benefits to improving the cycling infrastructure in terms of people's health and public health, that I really think we need to start making this temporary investment And as we move forward, we need to be setting policies around how we build safer streets. And I'm very much looking forward to our transportation master plan, which will be coming forward to council soon. Shout out to former councillor Mark Elliott, who talked about this for years. And I'm glad it'll be coming to fruition. So thank you.
All right, so 2 questions for clarification. First of all, Councillor, with respect to the 36,000, I'm going to make the assumption and ask that we clarify that that would be money coming out of the reallocated 1.188500 million, and which is supposed to be earmarked for active transportation. Am I correct on that?
I'm going to ask staff to decide where it comes from. Sorry, it should be, I'd like to hear from staff.
Okay, the second part of my question is to Councillor Littleton, as it's her motion. Is this a friendly amendment or should we vote on it separately?
It's friendly.
Okay, so this is a friendly amendment, so it'll be built into the balance of the motion, and then I will look to staff, given what this motion or this amendment is, would it be fair to say that it would come out of that approximately 1.2 million for active transportation, given that it's bike lanes?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to the funding for the bike lane bullards, that would be an option. However, I could also recommend that perhaps we could utilize the infrastructure levy as opposed to, because part of that 1.18 would be debt, and I think it would be better used the infrastructure levy for that.
Okay. Okay, so then, Councillor, given staff's opinion, could we then say then that it would be coming from the infrastructure levy? Would that be fair, Councillor Porter?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we have as the source for those funds. All right, if Councillor...
Chair, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but just for clarification, for our operations staff, does that monetary number also include the operational? You'll note in the report, there were a few costs that weren't identified, which were the staff cost for removal and the drilling into the asphalt. Would that number include operational costs as well? Just looking for clarification from the mover.
Yes, I believe the $9,000. I mean, we can ask Director Martucci for that. He came up with that number, and I thought that it included that, and perhaps Director Smith could talk about that. The other thing I think we should add to this is we need to be going to the region for some cost sharing when these are placed on regional roads. We should be asking that as well.
Yeah, and just to Mr. Oakes's question, the report does indicate that the estimated cost to install and remove a section of bollard would be $9,000 per kilometer, but there are other operational costs that would be related to inspection. Is there any other comment that needs to come? I see Mr. Smith is unmuted. So Mr. Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Again, I guess the question would be clarification as is this council's intent to have them year round, because there are operational costs around snow clearing that would have to be addressed with respect to keeping the bollards in the roadways during winter.
Can I ask why that's not in the report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't speak to that. Maybe Councilor or Director Martucci or Director Douglas could speak to that.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the reason the costs that were identified in the report were for the installation. It was the assumption that they would be removed for the winter months in order to allow for winter operations.
Okay, I would ask in the future if we're going to mention that this doesn't include ongoing operational costs, that we mention those operational costs sort of fully. I think that would be more helpful to the councillors. Looking to Councillor Porter, is the intention then that these would be removed in the winter? Or that they would be 24/7, 365?
I consider this a pilot project, so I am fine for the first season to remove them our winter season's getting shorter, obviously, but you know, we're gonna have to have another discussion about year-round bike lanes. So for now, I'm fine removing them. I don't want to add additional costs right now, but I think this is something we have to start with. Toronto started with bollards several years ago, and now they've moved into more permanent structures. So this gets us going, and we can have the discussion about winter operations next season.
Okay. All right, so Councillor Porter, if you are done, then I will go back to my list. I have Councillor Dodge and then Councillor Phillips.
I think my question's been asked and answered.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge. And Councillor Phillips, you are the final name on my list.
Sorry.
Councillor Dodge, go ahead.
I do have one other item, but I think that I would like to bring it up under item number 13.
Item number 13. Okay. All right. Thank you, Councillor Dodge. Councillor Phillips, you are the last speaker.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We had an earlier discussion a long time ago, it seems, with our construction professionals in regards to the amount of work that was done in the city. It surprised me when they said that we didn't get much work done, because with the Martindale Bridge, Geneva Street, Church and Niagara, and some work on the 406, I thought we'd done quite well this summer. To Mr. Martuccio, or Director Martuccio, as far as this year was concerned compared to next year, are we going to be doing, did you agree with what they said as far as the amount of work that we had done in 2020? Do we have any RFPs going out subsequent to the next month? And next year, will there be an increase, just to give us an idea of where we are?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, we did experience a decrease in tendering, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, as we adjusted to new work environments and work arrangements. And also there was a hold put on some of our projects when we were unsure of how our operating budget was performing. Our operating budget does go to fund some of the projects that we do, specifically with regards to resurfacing. So there was a there was a little delay, and there was a slight decrease in work. However, our intent as staff is to continue issuing tenders, and our staff are working diligently to try to get those out as soon as possible, as we are aware that the market is currently indicating good pricing. So.
Okay, with the asphalt companies usually closing down the 1st of December, you're saying those jobs are going to be done in the spring for 2021, or do you still hope to get some done depending on weather?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, our resurfacing contract was actually late at getting out because of our unknown operating budget. So that work was initiated. However, it is going to be put on hold with the cold weather. We can't place asphalt, but it will be picking up again in the spring, as well as we'll be issuing our outstanding tenders for that asphalt work early in the year as well.
Okay. As far as the Arthur Street bike lanes, not having seen the transportation master plan, I haven't said anything about them. Hoping that they would have been included. However, is there any plan? How far down the road are we with work as far as sidewalks on Arthur Street and resurfacing Arthur Street? I'm hoping there's going to be a grand scheme of things coming up. That's with perhaps bike lanes being included. Is that in the forecast?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the resurfacing currently isn't in the forecast. However, we are working through the preliminary stages of design for the sidewalks on Arthur Street, and hope to be constructing that as well in the coming year.
Okay. And just lastly, more of a comment than anything, it seems like for years now we've been trying to get the Welland Canal Parkway trail extended from Lakeshore Road down towards the lower end of Lock 1. We've been trying to get money from the region, and it hasn't gone very well so far. We've had meetings and that. Perhaps to Director Christie, have you heard anything? I know the plan is ready, Stuart Green has done a great plan. We've all agreed to that would be the final plan. Has there been any word? And if not, I'd hope that maybe next year in next year's capital budget, it would be included.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have not heard from the region or the regional councillor involved, but we can certainly follow up.
Okay, that would be appreciated, because I forget what the cost was. It was around $80,000 or so to finish it off, I think, was it not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that you're right. The $80,000 number rings a bell.
Right, and the Greater Niagara Circle route, when I was on it, had lots of money at that time, but I don't know where it went, where it ended up. It was supposed to get done. It was supposed to be done 10 years ago, I think, and we've been stonewalled. So I appreciate it if you'd follow that up. Thank you, Chair. Great job, staff, by the way.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. And I will just say, as one of the lucky residents over in Martindale, this year did not feel like a year without construction, given that at one point Martindale Island was almost impossible to get off of. So, and I would look to Mr. Martuccio to confirm that there's no more road projects scheduled on Martindale next year, but I actually don't want to know as of right now. With that, I see no other hands, so I will look to the clerk to call the roll on the motion as amended.
Councillor Littleton?
Can I speak? We're missing my amendment.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Littleton. I did
That's
not have
okay.
you on a speaker list. Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to be at the end. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for the discussion with my, that we all engaged in tonight. I think it was super important that we discussed all the issues that we did talk about. And I really appreciate all the comments and the work that's gone into it. I also just want to say thank you to staff for working so hard on this. I think COVID has showed, we keep talking about it, but COVID has really showed us how we need to pivot and really what is changing, I think, in the city. And one of the themes that we keep going back to, Councillor Williamson talked about it, Councillor Porta, I don't want to single out everybody, we're all kind of talking about it, and that's the need for active transportation. And so I just wanted to really talk about that. In terms of also with the ICIP funding, yes, it wasn't at all what we thought it was going to be, but I'm really pleased to see the merit trail piece of this, as well as some of the other pieces, and then the larger parts that are going to be funded through the regular channels. This is exactly what we were talking about when we're going to be working on our committee and all the work that's going to be going forward with that is this overarching strategy. How can we connect it all together? What do we need to do? How can we raise the funds? All of that is so important to be doing. And I'm hearing Welland Canal as well. And so that's obviously something that we need to be looking at. I did also want to mention about the pool. I don't know if we need to make, or the splash pad, I don't know if we need to make a motion. Maybe it's a consideration. This last summer, we couldn't open the Meriton pool for the reasons of it needed to be fixed. And I just wonder if we could, we're waiting for the aquatic strategy, and obviously that's fine. It's coming, and it's coming in Q1. And I'm just wondering if we can talk about or consider, maybe just consider getting that splash pad in Meriton, because when the pool, Port Dalhousie also doesn't have, when they have a pool, the pool opened this year, there is the beach there. Meriton had no water activities this year. So just maybe something really to think about from word counselor. I know Councillor Miller talked about it as well, and there's lots of locations that can be looked at, but that is certainly, that's really something I'm looking forward to. So I don't know if we need a motion just to say, can you please look at it? But I also wanted to look, before we do the amendment that I do have, I wanted to talk about Gale Crescent, because this was something that I think is really exciting, actually. And I talked to Director Martuccio about this because I've been doing a lot of reading. Seems that everyone in the world is talking about taking back streets, taking that away from car infrastructure and making it pedestrian friendly. And we think of piazzas in all over Europe and why they're so attractive and why people like to be on them. And when my brain was starting to go and I was thinking about the Gale Street work, and what is in here for this environmental assessment is exactly what we can talk about. And in my brain, I can see that piece as being something that could be a model perhaps for the rest of the city. And when we're looking at upgrades to city streets or pinpointing city streets that we can do this on. And he's not, let me be clear, he hasn't said that this is happening at all. This is an EA that's going to happen, but we're talking right here in the chart. He's talking about the design will consider the completion of missing sections of sidewalk. It is on the region bicycle network. It will be reviewed for the potential inclusion of appropriate cycling facility. And then it talks about the Merritt Trail as well, because that piece up there, that road is quite large, it's quite big. And I think we could probably get away with half of it for vehicular traffic. Think about what we could do with that. What if we could just have half of the street? On the other half, we could put in a dedicated bike lane, not just painted, but separate bike line. We could put in some benches. We could put in some gardens. All of this could be possible because if you think of what's happening in the area, first of all, if we're going to connect the trail, it's got to come up Oakdale, and then it's got to go along the top there to connect into the downtown. Otherwise, we have to punch through the MTO lands, which might be just very difficult. On the one hand is going to be the hospital redevelopment. If you think for a minute, that could potentially be another 2,000 people living there. On the other side is where our arenas are. We haven't made any decisions. I don't want anybody to start getting upset, but just imagine for a minute, we don't know what's going to go on there, but what if it turned residential and we had another 1,000 people sitting there? Now we need space. How better to have space than to reclaim those, a piece of street? So anyway, I just wanted to say that I'm really pleased when I see that in there. That's a lot of big picture thinking. That's a lot of forward thinking. We have the privilege, colleagues, we are building a city, and it's such a privilege to talk about these things. And I so am appreciative that we do talk about this, and we are working together to create a city that will be inclusive and a city that will transport us for the next 100 years. That's going to be even more wonderful than it's ever been. And so I think a lot of that is in this budget, and I just really am appreciative of that. So I'm going to stop, and but there's my motion or my amendment. So I'm asking that consideration be given to improving the Merritt Trail as additional active transportation funding as it becomes available. And that's the part of that $1.2 million that we're talking about. Staff is saying that they're going to come back to us with another report in first quarter. I'm asking that more Merritt Trail be considered in that.
Okay, so obviously a friendly amendment, given that it is your motion. So
unless anybody is really upset about that and they don't want that in there, we can talk about it.
I would imagine that will likely be friendly to the whole of the motion. With that, then, if there are no other speakers, I will look to the clerk to call the roll on the motion to move this to budget night. Deputy Clerk.
Councillor Littleton?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Porter?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik?
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento?
A hearty yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Chair Cisco?
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right. Very good conversation around the capital budget. I will say, in 10 years, that I think was the healthiest conversation we've had around a capital budget in that time, and I know it's appreciated. Item 8.2, Financial Management Services, Accounting and Payroll Development Studies Update. Can I have a councillor make the motion as it's presented on the screen? Just looking for a hand. Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Littleton. All right, so there are three parts to this motion. The first one deals with the terms of reference, which are added. There is a second part which deals with nominations to the Development Studies Task Force. And then finally, the project revision. The one thing I will caution councillors, we are not able to do a ballot. So if we have more than enough names, then we will not be able to actually to deal with that portion of the motion this evening. We'll have to look to staff to find a solution to that. It should be noted as the task force points, as the terms of reference point out, that Councillor Littleton is the vice chair of the budget committee and myself as the chair of the budget committee are already on the committee, and the committee cannot have a quorum of council. So something to keep in mind as we move forward. I have Councillor Porter and Councillor Garcia. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Chair Cisco. I just wanted to put my name forward. I have been talking about development charges for a very long time. I'm very interested in this study, and I'd love to be around the table speaking with members of the community and members of the budget committee and staff, and working with the consultants on this. I think it's one of the most important projects that we have of this term of council, and I would just love to be a part of it. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Porter has put her name forward. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also wanted to put my name forward, but I would also like to ask staff about the terms of reference. Can I do that now, or?
Now is the time, yes. So
Okay.
just for clarity though, you are putting your name forward as one of the councillors to sit on the committee, yes?
That's correct.
And then we can go on to your questions, Councillor.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask staff, how did they come up with the composition of this task force? Because based on my experience, I'm very concerned about having a task force with 13 members on it. I think it's going to be very unwieldy and very difficult to make decisions, and it's going to be extremely time-consuming meetings. That's about the same number of people we have around council, and that says it all. So anyway.
But we're such an efficient machine, Councillor Garcia. Maybe 13 is the perfect number. Looking to staff for an answer to Councillor Garcia's question.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. I will start, and perhaps the Deputy Treasurer Manager of Accounting and Payroll, Adam Smith, could provide some additional commentary with regards to his experience with dealing with development charges and task force. So the reason that there is such a large number is that, as Councillor Porter has indicated, the development charges is very much a large project, and it does very much touch all of these particular entities. Also, it is a consultation type of task force, and the intent is the task force is to gain some additional information and consultation with these various groups, and they can help form and develop the three important policies that are being developed, which is the development charges background study, the community benefit charges study, as well as the inclusionary zoning. And I'll defer to Adam Smith now as well.
So thank you, and so through the chair, the other piece that I'll add to the treasurer's comments is that when we were looking at the composition and trying to recommend something to bring forward, we did want to look at ensuring that we weren't having just the development industry represented on the task force, given the that it's more than just a development charge background study. There is the community benefits charge study and inclusionary zoning study. It was important to identify that we would have representation from Niagara Regional Housing, from one of our nonprofit or charitable housing agencies, so that we had that perspective, as well as to have a taxpayer representative, so residential and non-residential, as these studies will provide opportunities to look at different funding sources other than property taxes for some of our future growth-related capital moving forward. So we thought it was good to have a cross-section. It is a bigger task force than what we would typically do, but it does allow us to get input and consultation from a wide cross-section of people within the community.
Thank you. Thank you to staff, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I would add that I'm still concerned with the task force, which is not like council where we almost all of us attend all of the time. I sit on other task forces, and getting quorum can be difficult because it's you have a large cross section of people who are not necessarily committed to just this, but have other commitments, and I think it's unwieldy. So I would ask if we could, when we vote on this, if we could separate the terms of reference as a vote on them separately from the rest of it.
We can do that, Councillor. Yes. Okay. Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a comment, if, with your permission. I really do have an issue with this. I will not be supporting this. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is this, and I've got a funny feeling this is going to pass. I think it's going to be the will of council to pass this tonight. But when you talk to people who are investors or applicants, and God forbid I should say developers, they're just going to pass those costs along to the consumer. So at the end of the day, housing is going to become more expensive because they will just pass that cost right along, Chair. And I do know that we need to find new revenue streams, but you know, this is something that I'm very much opposed to. So I'll just say that. And Chair, if you'll just refresh my memory, I have Councillor Porter, Councillor Garcia, but I missed the third appointee. If you would be so kind, and I will be supporting them, by the way, if they should go to this. But
we only have two so far, Councillor.
Okay, great. I can't, and I recant that last part. I won't be able to support them. I do in spirit, but I'm going to vote no against this. But I've got a funny feeling it's going to pass. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Councillor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to say that I would put my name forward as well.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Dodge. So we have Councillor Porter, Councillor Garcia, and Councillor Dodge. Just looking to the committee, if there are no other questions, comments, or names to be put forward, we will vote on the terms of reference first, followed by the balance of the motion, which will at that point include the names of Councillor Porter, Councillor Garcia, and Councillor Dodge. And I will look to the clerk to call the roll on the terms of reference first.
So on the terms of reference, I have a mover of Councillor Phillips. So Councillor Phillips.
Sorry, yes.
Councillor Porter. Sorry, Councillor Porter, was that a yes or a no?
That was a yes, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Sorrento.
A very regrettable no.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
No.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Very proud, yes.
Chair Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
On the balance of the motion.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Unfortunately, no.
Councillor Townsend.
Fortunately, yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Neutral, yes.
Councillor Miller.
Fortuitously, yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Chair Cisco.
That passes.
Was that a yes for Chair Cisco?
Yes.
Then yes, it passes either way.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think my vote mattered there. Number 9, in-camera session, there is none. Number 10, motion arising from in-camera session, there's none. Item 11, I'm looking to Councillor Littleton. Will you be pulling that?
Yes.
Okay. Number 12, call for notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion relating to the Budget Committee? Seeing none, report requests. Councillor Dodge, you had indicated that you may want to move something to report requests.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Do I do that now then?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my request would be that staff make a request to the Region of Niagara to conduct a traffic study at the intersection of Lakeshore Road and Seaway College Road to determine if this intersection meets the warrants for the installation of a traffic signal, and further that the region consider the future installation of a traffic signal at this location.
Okay.
Councillor Dodge, can you please email that to me?
Right now?
It's Rebecca. Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just so I have the correct wording.
Okay, thanks.
But I do think that any councillors have any questions about that, or are we okay? Okay, all those in favor, or Councillor Phillips?
No, I'm good. I just have another comment to make in a minute. That's fine.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments with respect to the report requests. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, Councillor Phillips, before we get to adjournment.
Absolutely nothing to do with budget. Thank goodness. I challenge any councillor to show me a house in their ward that beats the house on the corner of Butler and Cindy Drive for Christmas tree lights. This place, Chevy Chase has nothing on this house. So I invite you to drive down with your children or your whomever and stop at the corner of Cindy Drive and Butler. And you might want to wear sunglasses, but it's something to behold.
Right now, yeah.
I don't know.
Be well, everyone.
Bye-bye.
I might put my stuff up in front of that, but okay. Item 14, motion to adjourn. Councillor Miller.
Sure, thank you. Just a reminder, everyone, you got your Secret Santas now to council, so happy shopping. And I move that this meeting, fun as it was, be adjourned.
All those in favor?